Okay guys, welcome back to the channel. This video is going to be a few firsts for me. As you know, I've always, if you've been a long-time subscriber, you know that I've pushed the value of video content and having your system be able to deliver video content. There's just no way you can get sometimes through streaming or even hard media the quality of some of these video performances that I've referenced in the past, like Roger Waters' The Wall, Andrea Bocelli, and even a lot of YouTube videos. I do have a playlist on my channel. You can check out best YouTube videos, and either the performance or the recording quality, or both, are far superior to anything you can get in streaming. So check those out for more information along those lines. But I've talked about those in the past, and I'll go through that playlist in more detail in a separate video. What I wanted to do today, though, is focus on a specific DVD and song that I think highlights why I think multi-channel has a higher bar than two-channel if done right. I will concede 100% that most home theater is crap, and most people's standards for home theater are even lower than crap. And most things I hear, even at $500,000 price tags, have this level of performance. And that's what I'm going to showcase today, actually, because I went to CEDIA, and this is kind of a follow-up video to CEDIA. I went into one of these demo rooms with $500,000 worth of McIntosh Sonus Faber gear, and they played The Greatest Showman, Never Enough, which is one of the best songs ever recorded on video. Certainly Simon Cowell says it's one of the best songs ever, and this performance is impeccable. Another reason you're going to want video content, guys, is to see this one track alone. This woman is one of the most beautiful women on the planet. Now, it's a lip-sync song if you know the whole story behind it, but I've talked about this briefly, but this song is incredible. If you had to pick one song to test the system, you'd be hard-pressed to find a better one than this. When you talk about female vocals and the orchestra and the dynamic contrast, I'm not a big fan of ever using one song to set things up. That's a very primitive way of setting up things, but this is the song to choose if you have one. So what I'm going to do today is, that was played in the demo at CEDIA with that McIntosh 11.12.6 home theater system. And I'm going to play it on my 5.2. And I'm going to let you be the judge. And I'll stop at some point. I'm going to also, though, another first for me is, though, I'm going to get super critical today. I'm usually not super critical unless it's gear I own. I will be brutally honest and frank, like I've done with Geo Research and everything else I own. Try to give it honest as I can. But I'm going to get brutally honest with home theater because, like I said, I think the bar should be much higher, and everybody's bar is set so low, we're not getting the pinnacle that's possible. Even through this YouTube video, though, that I put in part 2, I think you're going to get a sense for how good a quality home theater and multi-channel can be. Now, the ultimate litmus test is to come over. If you can come over one time, I know a lot of guys are coming over for Spooktacular. If you can come over and hear it live, that'll be great. But what I'm going to share with you in a second, I'll give you a chance to go check out that video first if you want with the music clip part 2, but then come back here if you want, or you can listen to me first tell you what I heard both live and the recording at the CEDIA and live and recording in my room. And what I hear is the difference and what I'm super critical about, especially in terms of the $500,000 system, because to me, this is a good litmus test. I think it's pretty easy which one sounds better, to my ears at least. And this will be a good litmus test. I'm not here to particularly do this video just to flex what I'm capable of doing in home theater. I mean, certainly that'll be part of it, that you can, if it resonates with you, what you're hearing, what I'm hearing, then great. You'll know at least a little more comfort to follow my advice going forward. If it doesn't resonate with you, then you know maybe you don't hear the same things I hear. But let me break down in a very critical fashion what I heard at CEDIA and why I will nitpick certain things, and then let you listen for yourself to see if you hear those same things. I'll pause for a second if you want to go jump to that. Don't want to do a spoiler alert. But let's get into specifics. And I'm not going to do like audiophile jargon stuff. I'm going to talk about specific points in the song, specific aspects that should be easy for you to go to and A-B. And really what I want to talk about right off the bat is the first piano notes of the song, because that's a big litmus test difference between what you'll hear in the version that I recorded and the version that I heard at CEDIA and recorded. And what you're going to hear, to me, is very twangy, piano with a lot of reverb that's unnatural reverb. Now, it could be due to the room. It could be the fact that there's 20-something speakers shouting that music at me. It could be due to them using box speakers. I talked about in the open baffle, the colorations that boxes sometimes add to the mid-range. Could be a variety of things, but I can't tell you which one it is. All I can tell you, when you hear the piano at the McIntosh room versus my recording, you're going to think that it's recorded much lower, but it's because this one's got so much more reverb and that extra energy that I don't think is natural. What you're also going to hear is when her voice starts, again, you're going to think that my recording is much lower, but when you pay attention to, especially when she gets to the word dream, when she sings that word, you're going to hear, at least I heard, in the bottom end of her voice, that lower mid-range is so heavy, and not so heavy. I'm somewhat exaggerating, but to me, I'm sensitive to it. I don't like it. It just added a heaviness and a little bit of twang, reverb, and unnaturalness I didn't like. Now, whether it was cabinet-based resonances with the speakers, too many channels, the room, I don't know what it was, but when you hear her voice on my system, open baffle, heavily treated room, it's just so much more natural, ethereal. The detail I hear, the breath, every little thing I hear, even at what seems like a lower volume of hitting you, is more information. And then what really kind of litmus tests and throws the balance even further in terms of the dynamic contrast is by the end of both songs, you're kind of going to think that my recording is higher level than that one at CEDIA, the McIntosh, because for some reason, when it starts getting to the crescendos and the high volume, yeah, it gets impressive somewhat, but the bass is not standing out like it should with 6 subs and all those channels. The dynamic contrasts are just not there for me. When you hear it on mine with simple 2 subs, open baffle speakers, treated room, and the crossover points I set, all these things I think make a difference. You'll hear much more bass energy, dynamic contrast, those drums, the orchestra just builds up just as much as her voice does, where I did not hear that as much with the Okay, guys, let me jump in real quick. I know you're going to say when you listen to the clips in the next video, say, man, he's super critical of that CEDIA room because it sounded pretty good to me. And like I said, it did get lots of wows, and a lot of people thought it was the best demo at the show. But when I talk about the dynamic contrast difference from my room and that room, I'm not just making this up based on subjective opinions. When I was rendering this video in my video editor, you could see even on a super zoomed out level meter of the audio, and I'll pop up, I took a screenshot about the same point in the song for both my room and that other room. You can see a bigger delta in my room versus the CEDIA room. And so you may say, oh, well, that's probably due to the noise floor at the CEDIA demo was much louder. And I wouldn't doubt that that's part of the equation, but just go ahead and add that to all the other things I'm mentioning in this video. The noise floor, the DSP, the room treatments, the type of speakers you use, how many speakers, all these, and sub crossover points, all of these things, that's the macro takeaway, is that you can't just throw money at a home theater and expect it to be the solution. You need to factor in all these things, and a lot of times you can get as good or better performance if you focus on these other things before you focus on the money. There's nothing wrong with the gear in the CEDIA room. For the most part, it's exceptional, except for if you do prefer open baffle versus seal box and whatnot. But this is showing that money alone will not solve your audiophile issues. So I'll get you back to the commentary from this video, and I'll pop up above and below the waveform that I saw in my video editor to give you a little more proof of what I heard is actually supported objectively as well. And so let's talk about what could cause these things instead of just talking and again, I don't like using nebulous jargon and no explanation for these things. Like I said, it could be open baffle, my room, but also crossover points. Here's a problem with home theaters nowadays. Everybody wants more channels, 20-something ceiling speakers, surround sound speakers. Those are just recipes for disaster. You don't need that. You don't need a single speaker over your head. I'm adamant about this. I can get planes to fly over my head without having, in my room, you can come over and hear it yourself. I've demonstrated it hundreds of times to people. You do not need ceiling speakers. Those are just a recipe for disaster. Number two, the reason for that is that usually they aren't full range. So what ends up happening? You end up having to cross those over high. So your subs now are playing frequencies that end up being coming into the lower mid-range area, at least some parts of it, adding that heaviness and that kind of bass glare, lower mid-range glare to voices, because you're crossing over so many speakers to these subs. It's coming from a different part of the room, all these things. I'm hypothesizing what happened there. It could be a variety of things. Like I said, the box cabinet, colorations, all kinds of things. But I'm hypothesizing, but this is stuff that I've encountered because I've spent a year doing this kind of stuff in my room and getting home theater just right. And, you know, kudos to them in the short time they had to set it up to get at least somewhat good performance, but certainly not to the level that I think it could be with that dollar value of equipment. You just did not get the dynamic contrast as you play that song all the way through. And so again, extra reverb, there's just too much reverb, and it could be all the channels. It could be that room that they constructed. It highlights to me the advantage of having a dead room like I have. When you hear me talk in these videos, you do not hear a lot of echo. And immediately, there's nothing. Why? Why do I do that? Well, because when you have content like this that does pick up the venue information that she's in, you do not want added on reverb, because then it adds that twang to pianos. It adds that aspect to her voice that's unnatural. And so this shows that a small room that's dead can still have the venue information come through, but not accentuate it such that it becomes annoying or a coloration. Again, maybe you hear something totally different than me when you hear these two. That's why I'm giving you the clips. I'm putting it all on the line. You can hear what you want and tell me what you hear differently if you do. But I think what most of you guys are going to hear is probably similar to what I hear, because it's pretty evident if you play it enough. I mean, obviously, you're going to have to go back and forth maybe a couple times. It's a good enough song. Hopefully you enjoy the song such that you enjoy listening it a few times. But I think you'll start to pick up on these things, and you'll probably get an appreciation for what quality is possible from multi-channel that you may have just dismissed because of the standards have been so low for so long. I don't blame you for poo-pooing home theater. I'm just here to kind of show you there is a potential for it to be super high. Come over anytime you want, hear it live. That's another great litmus test and even better. But enjoy those clips in the second video, and I'll see you back here soon.